If you'll eat your fat and your protein and your fiber first before your carbs and not do it in the opposite direction, you can dramatically affect your blood sugar spikes. So when it comes to things like that pumpkin spice latte or that eggnog, you're looking for a blood sugar roller coaster. Sometimes I get asked, can you still have blood sugar issues even though you're thin? And that is absolutely true. We see metabolic dysfunction in patients of all sizes. People sometimes are skinny fat. These blood sugar spikes affect everything from energy to mood, hunger, cravings, how you feel around your friends and family. And don't you want to feel the best? Welcome to the Trusted Pharmacist, where you'll learn the truth about how the body works. Rolling into the holidays, what if I told you if you give me 15 minutes, I can dramatically change the negative consequences on your blood sugars of your food choices that you make during these upcoming family get-togethers? And it's not that hard. And I've done this with thousands of patients to help not only improve their energy, their focus, but reduce weight. And that's what this podcast is all about. I'm Pharmacist Steve Hoffert, the Trusted Pharmacist. And today we're going to talk about 15 minutes of things you can do to change your blood sugars to have success during the holidays. We all know, I don't care how good you eat. I don't care how good you are during the rest of the year. During the holidays, it's so hard to stay on track. But what if I told you you can eat the same exact food at the same time, but eating it differently and doing different things can have a dramatic impact on your blood sugars? And anytime during the year, but especially during the holidays, if you don't control your blood sugars, you're going to be fatigued, exhausted, tired. You're going to put on belly fat. And you know what? You're just not going to feel your best. Think about past holidays. You felt that way. Well, today we're going to change that, because in working with patients in our weight loss class at Magnolia Pharmacy, I've learned some tips and tricks that have made a huge impact on people's overall health. But what's even more importantly is we know the holidays are a challenge, and you can use these during the holidays to help stabilize blood sugars, even when you maybe don't eat the best, so that you can have the best outcome during the holidays. So when all this is over, you're actually feeling pretty good going into the new year. So today we're going to break down why blood sugar spikes happen, what you can do to change those, and even more importantly, what your doctor's not really looking at that tells you blood sugar spikes are happening every day. Let's jump in. So when you have a blood sugar spike, immediately behind that is an insulin spike. And with that insulin spike comes inflammation. And with inflammation becomes metabolic dysfunction, which means your process of making energy and overall being healthy really diminishes dramatically. And these high blood glucose swings, you know what? They damage blood vessels, they accelerate aging, they make you feel lousy, and over time, they can actually lead to diabetes. And even worse, chronic blood sugar spikes drive cortisol, just like stress. But even worse, they wreck your hormones. And if you're a woman who's in menopausal or perimenopausal age, it just makes those hormone symptoms worse. And even one last thing, chronic blood sugar spikes will lead to food cravings, which make what you eat uncontrollable. And yeah, blood sugar spikes are doing damage on the inside, but on the outside, what do those look like? It's fatigue after meals. It's that belly fat that you have. It's that foggy brain, irritability, crashing after you eat a meal, sleep disturbances, and even having hunger just hours or minutes after you just ate. That's what blood sugar spikes look like on the outside that you notice. But let's talk about a little deeper how people can eat the same exact foods, but affect their blood sugars dramatically different. So let's talk about all the things that can affect your blood sugars from day to day, month to month, and person to person. First is gut bacteria. Depending on your diversity, how many good bacteria you have, how many bad bacteria you have, that can affect how well your body breaks down a meal and affect your blood sugars. Muscle mass. Some people have a higher metabolism just because they have more muscle. Stress levels. If you already have stress going on every day and you eat a bad meal, it just complicates those blood sugars because it's additive. Next is sleep quality. What's crazy is if you don't get good sleep, the next day your blood sugars naturally run higher. Depending on where you're at in your hormone cycle, that can also have an impact on how well your body breaks down blood sugars. And then also time of day. We found if we eat certain times of the day, eating more towards the morning is better. Eating late at night is bad. So those are all things that can affect totally with the same exact meal, how your body can control blood sugars differently. That's why one size diet fits all type mentality doesn't really work anymore. That is old science. It's not calories in, calories out, because all of these things affects blood sugar swings. And to make it even a little more complicated, things like the order of eating, whether you're eating fat and protein and fiber before your carbohydrates, have the ability to control those blood sugars. And so everybody's a little differently in how they process. And the one thing that I have found that is the game changer about trying to understand this is wearing a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. Because what I've learned is what makes one person's blood sugar spike may not do that to another person. And you'll never know this unless you do real-time glucose monitoring with the CGM. And to be honest with you, I've never seen anything change the impact of overall people and how they eat and what they do unless they wear one. And one fun tidbit, and you think you may be doing healthy, is using artificial sweeteners during the holidays because you don't want to put that sugar in your system. But new data is showing that these artificial sweeteners actually alter the gut microbiome, change the collection of the gut bacteria, and it actually indirectly causes glucose sensitivity issues where your body still doesn't control your sugars as well, even though there's no calories in those sweeteners. So keep that in mind if you're making this easy substitution during the holidays to be healthy. You may not necessarily be doing so. All right, so now that you know the things and how complicated this is, what are the strategies you can use during the holidays to control blood sugar spikes to make sure you feel your best and get through the holidays, even though you may not be eating exactly what you should be? Tip number one, drink water before your meal. And hear me, before your meal, not necessarily during your meal. We'll talk about that. Anywhere between 300 to 500 milliliters has actually been shown to help control blood glucose spikes related to the meal you eat afterwards. Trying to consume this water 15 to 30 minutes before your meal has actually been shown to produce satiety. That's a sensation of fullness. It's also been shown to minimize glucose spikes related to meals, but more importantly, control cortisol spikes. So this is unique, but what's been shown is if you're actually drinking a lot of water during your meal, this can actually speed up gastric emptying and actually may make your glucose spikes worse. So water before your meal, beneficial. With your meals, maybe not. And keep in mind, water promotes hydration, which makes for better glucose uptake and overall controlling those blood sugars better, as long as it's done before your meals. Eat your food in the right order. What's crazy is we've learned if you'll eat your fat and your protein and your fiber first before your carbs and not do it in the opposite direction, you can dramatically affect your blood sugar spikes. You can flatten those glucose curve by eating that avocado and eggs before your fruit. And then also you can eat your chicken and your green beans before your potatoes. And there's even something called a second meal effect, which means at your breakfast meal, if you'll try to make sure you get plenty of protein and fiber, not only will it keep your blood sugar stable in the morning, but it actually has the ability to stabilize blood sugars throughout the rest of the day. So you might keep that in mind about that first meal of the day, about trying to promote good protein and fat early on. So to make sure you keep your blood sugars controlled throughout the day. Next, don't drink your carbs. Those things like smoothies, lattes, fruit blends are like candy in a bucket because even though you're eating healthy fruits, but you blend those, you destroy that fiber matrix, you allow that sugar to get absorbed immediately. And if you want to spike your blood sugars like Pike Peak, challenge me on this. Make your fruit smoothie and watch what those blood sugars do. It is a disaster, and especially during the holidays when you're mixing it with other foods that are already going to spike your blood sugars. So here's the science behind this. When you liquefy your carbs and you don't chew them and you minimize the fiber content, that's when the blood sugar roller coaster starts. So when it comes to things to like that pumpkin spice latte or that eggnog, you're looking for a blood sugar roller coaster. So stick with things like your unsweetened teas, look for things like coffees and water, and keep it simple because these, like you said, these blended fruits and these lattes and these drinks are a disaster for your blood sugar. This next one is huge. Move after meals. Think about the holidays. You eat all that food and then what do? You go sit on the couch and watch TV, and that is a disaster for your blood sugar. 15 minutes of walking after a meal has been shown to lower that post-meal blood sugars by 30%. And there isn't any medication or anything else I can give you that can work like that. And one of the new things I hear in the wellness world is something called exercise snacking. This has to do with short bursts of push-ups, body squats, climbing stairs, because what this does, this depletes the glycogen. That's the storage energy in your muscles. And when that happens, your body will then better take up the glucose that's in your meals and store it. And this is better than even just walking by itself. And if you want to go one step further, look at things like resistance training either before your meals or after your meals to improve that insulin sensitivity and actually reduce insulin resistance and more importantly, keep those blood sugars under control. A next one is front load your carbs earlier in the day. Believe it or not, eat the bulk of your calories and your carbs earlier in the day, like at breakfast and lunch, versus late in the evening, because your body gets a better glucose response if they're done earlier in the day. Your body is metabolically primed to handle those carbs earlier in the morning. So if you're going to have those desserts and pies and things like that during the holidays, eat those earlier in the day and don't save them for late at night. Next, prioritize sleep and manage stress, because poor sleep will totally wreck your circadian rhythms. And when that happens, I don't even care what age you are, you're going to have worse blood sugar control. Sleep deprivation drives insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. So during the holidays, when your blood sugars are already going to be out of balance, work on things for relaxation like meditation, breath work, calming, prayer, and even making sure you get adequate sleep, because this will only help make your blood sugar control better when those blood sugars are going to be out of control by what you're eating and doing. And a couple bonus strategies to help you get through this period. One is maximize supplements that can actually help reduce stress and cortisol. And two of my favorites are a high quality omega-3 and magnesium. Next, look for targeted probiotics that have been shown to actually help control blood sugar levels, but most importantly, that postprandial blood sugar. And those probiotics contain things like Akkermansia. A couple of my other favorite supplements that can be helpful to help control blood sugar levels, especially during the holidays, are berberine, chromium, and cinnamon. And whether it be during the holidays or any other time of the year, if you really want to know how you're doing in terms of blood sugar control, because this ultimately leads to insulin resistance and prediabetes, you can have your doctor do markers like a fasting insulin. And keep in mind, we don't want to look at normals. We want a fasting insulin below 6. Other markers to look for insulin resistance are like a hemoglobin A1C, something called a HOMA-IR, and even looking at something like a triglyceride to HDL ratio can actually tell you where you're at in that insulin sensitivity spectrum. So working with so many patients with weight loss issues and more importantly, keeping your blood sugar under control, these are common questions I get. Why do I feel so tired even after eating a clean meal? And what I typically say is, even though you think you're eating healthy carbs, you may still be biking up blood sugar. And the way to know that is get a CGM. But I can tell you, if you still find a problem with this, you may want to look at doing the food stacking where you're doing your carbs after your proteins, your fat, and your fiber. Because a lot of times if you'll put those carbs later in the meal, you won't have those blood sugar spikes, even if you're eating a low glycemic carb, because still putting those in the front of the meal still can spike blood sugars, make you tired, run down, and fatigued. Sometimes I get asked, can you still have blood sugar issues even though you're thin? And that is absolutely true. We see metabolic dysfunction in patients of all sizes. People sometimes are skinny fat. And what that means, they are thin on the outside, but fat on the inside. And the only way to really check this is looking at things like a HOMA-IR, looking at things like a fasting insulin, because many times you can still be thin and have insulin resistance going on. I get asked, what's better, cutting carbs or pairing them? And I can tell you over the years, we're better off to take and not try to eliminate carbs, because that is virtually impossible. But pairing them, and that means eating that protein, fat, and fiber first with your carb, is a much better long-term sustainable outcome than trying to cut carbs altogether. Next question, how long should I walk after a meal to get that blood sugar benefit? And I'll tell you, you need to at least walk 10 to 15 minutes, because that's been shown to drop those blood sugar spikes by 20 to 30%. But if you want more effect, do those exercise snacking, those little bursts of squats, walking stairs, jogging in place, get a little bit more activity, and you'll see an even more benefit in your blood sugar spike. And finally, does alcohol affect your blood sugar? And sadly, yeah, the answer is yes. It can sometimes delay those post-meal spikes, but the worst part about alcohol, it actually causes a problem with your body's ability to manage your blood sugar overnight. And that's a problem if your blood sugar spiked while you're sleeping. So in addition to controlling blood sugar spikes, what can you do in a root cause way to help improve your metabolism? And it's pretty simple. First, add more muscle. You got to put on muscle mass. And that is so critical, because we are much more metabolically fit doing nothing the more muscle we have on our body. Reducing inflammation. Inflammation just drives blood sugar issues and makes metabolism, oxidative stress more worse. Fix that stress and fix that sleep. These are so critical because they have such a dramatic impact on your metabolism, and it has nothing to do with your food. So a bad diet with high stress and poor sleep is a disaster. Hydrate strategically. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water, drinking it before meals, and that is super important. Make those breakfasts protein heavy. That's critical to get the body off to a good start, controlling blood sugars earlier, because that helps control blood sugars later in the day. Work on that gut health. Take a good probiotic. Work on those gut health techniques, and even things like Akkermansia has been shown to improve that overall gut health. And finally, time your meals wisely. If you can try to eat earlier in the day and keep those carbs and those blood sugars from spiking later in the day, you're going to have much better success in terms of being metabolically fit, feeling better, having less fatigue, clearing that brain fog, and having a much more successful holiday season. So it's the holiday season. Don't you want to feel the best around your friends and family? And controlling blood sugar spikes is just one piece of the puzzle. But I can go back and say these blood sugar spikes affect everything from energy to mood, hunger, cravings, how you feel around your friends and family. And don't you want to feel the best? So during the holidays, use these little blood sugar tips that I gave you today to set yourself up for success. Because if you can be successful during the holidays, you will be much more successful during the year. So remember, this same meal doesn't mean the same blood sugar. And now you have the ability to control that. Take control of your metabolic health and always keep seeking the truth about how the body works.